I don't know if there's much to do other than say, you're winning the battle for recognition. You're getting there. I find fewer and fewer people I meet at lectures, not addressing Armenians, but others, who actually have any doubts about the genocide. I think you're winning that battle, but you've got to keep going. What I think you're not actually doing perhaps quite enough on is not the research, which Hayek spoke so eloquently about, into getting every possible document that ever exists in the world now on the genocide, or from all over. Australian records, for example, British military records. I think it's that you're not yet working out how you're going to memorialize the Armenian Holocaust, or genocide if you like, in 100 or 200 years' time. I've had discussions with Jewish friends in Jerusalem of what's going to happen when the last Jewish survivor of the Nazi Holocaust dies, and their children die, and their grandchildren die. And I don't know how you do this, but you should think about it, because I don't think just having an Armenian Genocide Museum in Washington is going to keep this piece of history alive in the minds of the world. I suggested to my Jewish friends in Jerusalem that one of the things they need to emphasize is that the Jews of the Holocaust represent us. Of course they were Jewish, and the Jewish identity of these people must remain forever. They were killed because they were Jews by Hitler. If they'd been Aryans, they would not have been murdered, and they weren't. The Aryans of Germany were not murdered. Well, they were killed in large numbers, but they weren't murdered by Hitler. And the Armenians were murdered because they were Armenians. If they were other Muslim citizens of the Ottoman Empire, they would not have been, unless they were converted, they would not have been massacred in 1.5 million in 1915. And my argument has always been that while maintaining strictly and totally the identity of those who suffered the genocide, the two great genocides of the last century, it is more and more important to identify them with people who are non-Armenian and non-Jewish. When the first book my mum let me read as a child was The Diary of Anne Frank. Of course, because it's a beautiful book, it's genuine, there were some extracts left out in the first editions, but the real full edition is stunning. And I remember, I must have been at 10 or 11, I learned to read pretty well. My parents taught me to read before I went to school. And I remember thinking that Anne Frank was just like my cousin. I'm not Jewish as far as I know, my family originally came from the Baltic area. But it didn't strike me. What struck me was that this little girl was like my cousin, or like the sisters of lots of my school friends. There was another book I read not long ago, which had an incredibly moving moment when it was a British survivor of the Holocaust who had, of course, remarried, but his wife and child were killed at Auschwitz. And he saw them taken away. They went to the selection camps at Auschwitz. And he was separated from his young wife and their baby. And he was sent off down a track towards the labour barracks. He was going to be used for hard labour by the Nazis. His young wife and baby, of course, were being put on a truck to be sent straight to the gas chambers. It was at night, of course, as most of the transports arrived in Auschwitz at night. It was a huge searchlight for the Nazis. And as he walked up the track, a truck passed him, a German army truck, and sitting right at the back under the floodlights was his young wife, who held out his baby for the last time he could see it. My reaction was, God, it could be me. And that is the only way, I think, that you can keep the memory of your genocide and the Jewish Holocaust alive, to constantly remind people that you're just like us, and that we are just like you. And that, I think, is the only way in which in hundreds of years' time, or 1,000 years' time, people will identify directly with your suffering and the Jewish suffering. On that note, thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen.